And welcome in, everybody, wherever you are, however you may be listening. This is your Wednesday wrap-up, and of course, I'm with my man, Herb. How you doing, man?
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Early, but it's a beautiful day. I'm ready to rock and roll today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the trade deadline finally comes to pass, and there were some trades that made sense.
Yeah.
And
some
that did not.
The nicest way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, so probably one of the more notable ones, the Steelers, they go get Mike Williams. Huge pickup for them. I mean, obviously you knew the Jets were going to move on from him because Rodgers just doesn't like the guy. But
right. He's been in the doghouse.
Right. He drops one pass despite the fact like the game before he made like 3 crazy catches, but no big deal. Or I mean, runs the wrong route rather.
Yeah. Well, according to some who throw interceptions, he ran the wrong route. So
yeah. Exactly. But the Steelers picking him up, that is a huge win for the Steelers.
Yes.
Like the
Steelers
have
been linked to every freaking wide receiver trade that's come out over the last month or two. So
as they should have been. They have one receiver.
Yeah.
Like they're winning games with one receiver and a quarterback that's doing okay.
Yeah.
Right. So for them to go get a legitimate number 2 option is huge for them. And then adding a edge rusher to a defense that probably didn't need it is awesome. Yeah. So even though I'm not a huge Steelers fan, I got to respect the effort they're putting out. They look like they want to go try and win.
Yeah, definitely. They're like, hey, you guys want an edge rusher? Like, no, we're good. Okay, just give us a 7th rounder. Okay. we'll do it.
I think is the wildest thing when you look down that right column is nobody gave up anything for people this year.
No.
I mean, the highest pick was the 3rd rounder for Adams.
Yep. And for Cooper mixed in there.
Yep. Was he a 3rd? I thought he was a 4th.
It says on here 3rd and a 7th.
Oh, okay.
I would have agreed with you originally. I thought it was a 4th, but in any case, yeah, you've got 3 3rd rounders mixed in here. But like to your original point, yeah, there's not no day 1 picks, no 1st, 2nd rounders. Yeah, like.
Well, and big names. Like that was the biggest thing, right? Like you got Adams, you got Cooper, 2 guys I thought for sure potentially gets a 1st rounder, right? Definitely Adams.
Yeah.
So kind of crazy. But the other one I liked was the Ravens picking up Tre'Davious White.
Yeah.
That will help them. Probably the biggest asset of this whole list was Washington with Lattimore.
I did like that one. You need to prop up that defense too, some.
Yeah, well, and you look at the teams they're going to have to beat, all have 2 legitimate receivers.
Yeah.
And adding this corner helps them defend that.
Yeah.
So Washington is the biggest surprise to me because obviously going into this year, you didn't really know what they were going to be. New coaching staff, new players, new ownership group. You didn't really know if they were going to be good. You thought they had potential. But man, you make this move because you think you can win.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And you've let it play out long enough this year to see it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're far enough into the season. We haven't fallen apart. Morning, Linda. What's up?
Hey. I mean, you can say that, but when you keep leading the league in yardage and stuff, it's
tough to do.
Especially from bad teams.
And the quarterback that you're basically catering to wants the guy. Like, if the Raiders had held out a little longer, you just never know. So we're not saying he's worth the 1st. We're just saying surprised that maybe it didn't get pushed towards that, a conditional 3rd rounder.
I think they probably could have got more for him. I know they could have got more for him if they'd have done it in the offseason like they wanted, like the Jets
wanted to do. Yeah, I mean, that was just a fail on the Raiders all the way around. It's like not knowing that they were in a rebuild.
Exactly. I mean, that's the Raiders for you, though.
Yes. Yes, can't even mention that.
Like if you're trading out Carr for Minshew, you should know you're rebuilding.
Yes.
Like I don't feel like there's a question there. You're just like, oh yeah, no, like that's what we're doing, as opposed to no, we're keeping all the toys. We're just not going to have a toy box anymore. It's like,
Yes.
okay, like that. So your room's just a mess. Cool.
But it's like all of us knew it, but them somehow. Like,
Yeah.
are we being for real here, guys? So no, but that was good. I was actually driving yesterday, so I'm trying to keep up with these, as they're coming in and stuff. And like I said, I love the Pittsburgh move on there, and Washington. I like the guys going for it, which brings me to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. Well, so that was the head scratcher on the list, and not so much because they went and got him. I mean, okay, cool. You can always use an extra receiver, and he's a good slot guy. But you give up a 4th rounder, which is what people were giving up for elite talent, for a guy that has 12 catches this year. I understand he was a 2nd rounder last year, right? But I mean, he hasn't been used at all. So I guess the question here is, this has to be a move for next year, right? Because Dak is likely going to be on IR. So it's going to be a Cooper Rush show. They have no running game to speak of. They haven't signed Parsons. Like this has to be a move to like develop this kid for next year.
Except that they're not good at developing, to me. It's like this is probably unfair, but like I think about they went and got Trey Lance, and then he's just going to walk for nothing. So are you getting
they
guys?
Gave up nothing to go get him either, though.
Yeah, but it's still like, what was the point? I mean, they gave up about equal compensation to go get a wide receiver. They're keeping them for a quarterback they just buried on the depth chart for no reason. So, yeah. And I know it's not like an apples to apples. It just doesn't make me think of the place where you're going to go to, like, I don't know, get better if I'm going to Dallas, especially in this position. They've needed a second wide receiver by CeeDee Lamb. Especially with the injuries and stuff, and they've been chasing it for a long time. But now the starting quarterback, is done. It just seems weird in the context of we're all in this year, which spectacularly failed. It's almost like he did a move just to say, "Hey, see, guys, we're still trying to get better." Does this move the needle at all for the Cowboys? No. So
no. In fact, the only thing it does is keep them in the news cycle because you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, maybe the kid balls out and it was just a lack of opportunity with the Panthers because let's be real, that could be a thing. But man, day one, it sure looks like a weird move. And even if he does ball out, it's not going to be this year because if they throw Dak on IR, he's done for at least 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay. So you have Cooper Rush heading into not the easiest schedule ever. He gets to start off with the Eagles. So, I mean, you can probably slate that as an L. So say this is a realistic 4-game run where they go 1-3, right? What's that make them? A 4-win team?
By the time Dak's coming back, you don't want him to come back?
Yeah. I mean, do you bring him back, right? Like if there's any question that there's some tightness or whatever, you're just like, yeah, sit it out, man. Cause you're a 60 million a year guy. And so let it be the Cooper Rush show, maybe see what you have in Trey Lance before you let him walk out the door. Cause at the end of the day, Trey Lance, like the Niners gave up the farm to go get the guy.
Right.
He does have some athletic talent. You might as well throw him on the field, see if he can stay healthy, see what he has. Because, I mean, I don't know that you get to keep Cooper Rush anyway. I think his contract comes up at the end of the year. He's too serviceable of a quarterback with the way that their cap is to keep him. I mean, that's how Seattle lost Drew Lock, is they couldn't afford it.
Right.
If you're a truly serviceable backup, then, I mean, teams that are cap strapped are going to have a hell of a time actually keeping that talent.
Right.
Oh, here we go. Who won the trade deadline? Honestly, the Steelers I like. The Lions, obviously, that was a huge need with Hutch getting hurt. But I think it's Washington. I think that second corner pickup for a team that is playing it way ahead of schedule and help solidify a defense that was already good. I really like that move. Obviously, the Lions, that was a no-brainer. They had to pick that up.
Right.
And same with the Steelers, right? So it's not like those moves were anything we weren't expecting. Whereas Washington doing anything at the trade deadline was kind of unexpected. I thought they were just going to kind of stand pat, be like, hey, we got our guys. We think we know what we have. And then they go and get a Pro Bowl caliber corner. I mean, you got to like that move.
Yeah. It's resetting expectations for Washington. I think they came in, like you said, what do we have this year to, hey, I think we can win the division. And I think that's where that trade comes out in the middle. So, but all the teams you mentioned on there, Steelers, Lions, Washington, I thought were all really good moves. So,
obviously I'm leaving KC off of this because I hope it does. None of these things work out.
I feel like KC could trade for a second punter and like make it work somehow. At this point, like it's just kind of like you said. I don't know. I mean, Hopkins, we've all been wondering what's going on. Then all of a sudden he balls out his first, and you're just like, whatever,
well, you knew he would. I mean, that is the thing that is frustrating because people are like, oh yeah, D-Hop's washed. It's like he literally had the mayonnaise man and Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball and a Tannehill that had his arm like falling off his body. Like how exactly, how good do you think he's going to be when you play a position that's dependent on someone getting you the ball? Like it's not like a running back where they hand it to you and you go and do what you do. You have to have a quarterback that can hit you downfield. And based on the names that we just put out there, which one of those is that guy?
No, you're definitely right. You're definitely right. And he's got to be ecstatic. That's probably one of the, I mean, for a conditional fifth rounder, getting Hop, he immediately plugs and plays and has a great game for them. Yeah. So I see why we're leaving.
If you're D-Hop, the league just almost handed you a ring. You're like, oh, you know what? You've been in this wasteland for a few years.
Yeah.
Have a Super Bowl. Like,
Meanwhile, they all go collectively decide to beat up on the Titans too. Like, what are you doing? It was hard enough already.
Yep.
You did not have to do that to us. So,
well, especially for nothing in return. I mean, a fifth, really?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a future Hall of Famer. You can't figure out how to get a third or all right. No, there was no real names that I was surprised. I found that like the trade deadline isn't as crazy as it once was, right? Like when you think a decade ago, you'd see some big names, or even 5 years ago, there was quite a few like big moves. But we kind of haven't seen a lot of that recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe some of it is because nobody's willing to give up the draft picks, with the exception of the Cowboys. They clearly, want to overpay for stuff. But everybody else, it's like, yeah. So if you give me your Hall of Famer, I will give you a seventh and some Doritos.
And they're like, what flavor Doritos?
Exactly. And they were going to be like, yeah, so it's the spicy nachos that kind of taste like chalk. Like,
Yeah. Fine, but I won't be happy.
That's right. If they were the Cool Ranch, maybe, but
yeah. So no, I'm with you. Like the names I thought, like Mike Williams was a big one, and then any edge to Detroit. I know that they've been linked for a while, so it's almost like the teams that I thought would make trades did it. So that's why I was surprised. Pittsburgh finally getting a wide receiver, like I said, Detroit with edge. Those are like the two biggest ones I was looking at to have made a move. I know people were kind of testing the waters on Bryce Young, so I was kind of like looking for that to happen just to get his escape out of there.
Oh, there was no way.
Yeah, but I was just it was more of a hopeful than a this is gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like, here's your get out of jail free card. So yeah.
Yeah, no, they gave up too much to go get him. Like there was no way they were going to let him leave. At least not yet.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and then there's some of these things on this list, like the two Seahawk players. I mean, you go and get a defensive tackle, and you're like, okay, cool. They need that position, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but they got it from the Jags. You're like, okay, well, cool, I guess. Like one of the worst defenses in the league. It's a guy they didn't need, so that seems awesome.
Right.
And they pick up a linebacker, but they got rid of a linebacker, so you're just like, okay, so it's a swap, and he's a little younger.
The new guy's better.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like he's a upgrade over the player, but does that actually fix anything on this defense? No.
Right.
So I mean, It just kind of none of those made sense. Obviously, Cooper to the Bills was huge. Like some of these were true needs, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
Up to KC was a need. Cooper to the Bills was a need. Adams, if they had an organization that wasn't a train wreck, probably would have been an upgrade.
Right.
Or, like Zadarius Smith to the Lions fills the hole, and obviously that's going to be great when Hutch comes back next year.
Yes.
Right. So,
you make it even worse. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That defense is crazy. And then the Cowboys do cowboy things, which,
when I saw that one come across, I was like, oh.
So this is the part that cracked me up about it is Jerry that morning is like, we are not sellers, we're buyers. And we're like, okay, so what's that mean? You have a quarterback that's, going to be done for the next 4 or 5 weeks. What's that look like? And he's like, I'm going to go get this obscure receiver that has 12 catches this year. That's what we're buying. It's like, okay. I mean, that's like throwing rims and tires on like a Pinto. You're like, okay, like the rims look good, I guess.
Yeah.
It's going to be on the back of a tow truck anyway.
I'm looking at the comments real quick. The fans are roasting them for that pick.
So, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, that is fun.
So Crosby, the Raiders shut that down as soon as that started getting real traction. They're like, we are absolutely not dealing Crosby. And I think it's because of how many years he still has left on the contract. They're thinking they can rebuild in a quick way and still have him as a centerpiece of their defense. Sadly for Crosby, I think he's going to get to the end of his contract and this team is still going to be bad.
I agree.
So,
if the Raiders were smart, they would get max value for him right now.
Exactly.
But I said the same thing. What about Devontae Adams? And then, what was the old Clemson receiver they just had up there that they wasted him? Yes, I read that one. I smiled. That's why I love my brother. But they've had some talent come through there, and they held on to all of them just long enough to ruin their value, and then half of them walk out the door for nothing. So it's like, okay.
And then I guess at the same time, you're looking at this list over here. Would they have really got max value? Because it looks like this year nobody's giving max value for anybody.
Right.
So maybe what the phone calls weren't even entertainable, and they're just like, you know what, we're keeping them. It's kind of like somebody like you're selling something, somebody just lowballs you, and you're like, you know what, it's cool, I'll keep it, it's fine.
Yeah. Which kind of just makes more Max Crosby the biggest loser on here, because then it's just like, sorry, man, you probably have a great prime, and none of us will ever get to see it.
Well, I mean, you will, because it'll be the only Raider highlight. It'll be like Crosby went off for 3 sacks today. Moving on.
Yes. Raiders still lost by 20. All right.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. You can try the mayo and coffee. I hate mayo, so there's a 0% chance that's ever going to happen in my life.
Cannot. I don't. It's sad that that's what he's going to end his career, and that's what he's going to be known for too.
I mean, he never did anything. Honestly, getting rid of Vrabel, was the worst thing for that team. But he goes to a couple of, playoffs. He has a rough year. Realistically, the way that should have went down, Vrabel keeps his job. The GM should have been fired.
Yeah.
Because Vrabel was coaching his butt off with what he had. And the GM is like, I wonder if you can win with some salt packets.
Yeah. And he's like, a couple games, but can we like not get a whole salt container? No, just the packets.
Just the packets. Yep. That's it.
That's it.
Some of them are already wet.
Yeah. So good luck. And it's funny, you listen to a Tennessee Titans podcast, and the guy on there is like, oh, it was time to move on. Or I need to go back and listen to a podcast from when Vrabel was actually fired. Yeah. Because the comments he makes after the fact, like now, he didn't seem like a big fan of Vrabel. And I'm like, what am I missing from the outside that somebody close to the team is seeing? That team was terrible towards the end, and it's like Tannehill was bad towards the end. They were basically wasting Derrick Henry because you can already see, he's still got, a lot left in the tank. So it was your team. It wasn't him necessarily. So,
yeah, well, he got hurt there, though. So he had that foot injury that sidelined Henry for part of the year. But you had Tannehill that his arm just looked dead. Like he couldn't connect with anybody. You had, D-Hop basically just running decoy because Tannehill couldn't get him the ball. Again, most of that falls on your GM. It's just like, okay, who do you have behind Henry if he gets hurt? Oh, nobody. Okay, cool. Do you have a serviceable backup at quarterback? Nope. What do you have otherwise at receiver? Nothing. What's your defense look like? Kind of bad.
So what do you do well?
Exactly.
Collect a paycheck.
That's right. That's right. It's just like, when you're listening to that, you're just like, okay, so what part of that says win?
Right. Right.
How's it going, Jeremy? Yeah, no, it's, I don't know. It just, I felt bad for him because I feel like he got kind of forced out of a situation that he had no control over. Yeah. Because the guys still fought for him. They still went out and tried. You could see effort. They just weren't good.
Yeah. They won some surprising games here and there. So, you can tell when a team quits on it, and that's not what he had. It's like, yeah, coach, we've got like 3 decent guys on this team. The rest of us are just going to give it our best. So, yeah,
we got three decent guys. One of them's hurt.
Yes.
The other one can't get the ball.
Yes.
So go win. It's like, cool. Yeah, let's do that.
I think that's what I'm doing. I'll have to go back and listen to the end of the Vrabel era and see why they were ready for him to go from the podcaster spot. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, it would be interesting, especially if you could get into like some of the local beat writers type of stuff. It would be interesting to see what they were seeing inside the building.
Right.
Because from the outside, you're just like, firing this guy made no sense.
Right. And I remember thinking that at the time. So I'm with it.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, Pinsman?
So, I am not surprised Miami didn't make any moves. Well, so since you're here, let me ask you this question. What is the one guy that actually fixes your team? There isn't. You have too many holes. Like that's not a real thing. That's like, the Seahawks. It's like people here were mad. They're like, oh, why didn't they go get some more offensive linemen? It's like, are you gonna trade for an entire offensive line because that's what they need? Like, I don't think you have enough draft picks for that.
Right. And it's funny because Raj and I have actually discussed this, and I think the answer is in the answer he gave me. We talked about what does this offseason look like for the Dolphins, and it was like first round draft defense, second round draft defense,
sure,
third, fourth, one of those picks, maybe like a quarterback that's like, okay, this guy's not high, but somebody who would be serviceable. you know, when Tua goes down again, sorry, Raj, but it's just a win, not an if at this point.
Oh, no, for sure.
You know, don't need like some big name first guy's going to sit, but a guy that you don't care. Yeah, he's third round. If he sits on the bench for a couple of years, we're fine. But we know he's got a decent mobility and a decent enough arm to get us by, because what they have right now is just, we've already discussed it at length, it's terrible. But we're like defense / quarterback somewhere in there, defense. Yeah, see? So that was
yeah.
I actually think the offense is fine once you have a good guy running it. But once you've built your whole team on offense and not invested in the defense really, and then the captain of the ship goes down, then the whole team just looks bad. But yeah. So I could see those picks.
We knew what you meant. We knew what you meant. Although
I think that's how they end up spreading out their picks.
Could have went and got Carr.
I don't know. There's like way more coming out about Carr. I guess Michael Thomas kind of started it, and other people seem to be piggybacking it, like trying to get his wide receivers killed. So
Olave getting laid out, you know, didn't help that narrative for sure. Because man, that one was rough. He got blasted.
Yeah.
But I mean, Michael Thomas also just hates Carr. Like over the years, he's put a lot of stuff out. So, I mean,
I don't have it in me. Like I guess I'm just at some point like, I'm done. He's carrying this around forever.
It's weird because it's so much effort to be angry all the time.
Yes.
I just don't have the bandwidth for it. I don't care enough. I think it's some of it too. It's like, oh, you don't like me? Cool. That's actually kind of none of my business. I don't care.
Especially for somebody who probably never ever thinks about you. Like they're in your head. You're not in their head. Like I dare doubt there's a day go by that Carr wakes up and goes, I wonder how Michael Thomas is doing today. Like I guarantee you.
Only in these moments.
Yes.
Right? And then he's like, oh, wait, I know exactly how he's doing. He's just having just some bitter action is all he's doing.
What up, Big Mike?
So, it's the Derek Carr thing is definitely a weird situation. But, you know, of course, that happened this week, too. Dennis Allen finally gets fired. Yes. And I say finally because it should have been at the end of last season.
Yes.
Maybe even mid-season last season, really. He's had a very talented roster that he's done very little with.
Yes.
And this is the second time. It's not like this is new for Dennis Allen. He was terrible with the Raiders also. So this is a pattern for him. I don't think he gets another shot at being a head coach, but why did it take so long? I don't get it.
Yeah. And the fan bases aren't always right, but I don't know a single Saints fan that didn't wake up every day saying, can we fire Dennis Allen? It was one of the most consistent things you've ever seen. And I know one of their problems was this year they had a lot of injuries. And so it becomes that little built-in excuse. He was terrible before the injuries. He was terrible, like you said, last year. So what they do sometimes, they let a guy hang out so long that he has something that, oh, no, this is why it's happening. No. He was bad before.
Yep.
Okay. He'll be bad after this. So, like, let's stop using these other narratives. Because I'll say this, nobody that wanted him fired put anything into those excuses. None of them mentioned injuries. They were like, he's a bad coach. Like, you can see he's a bad coach, period. So, I don't know how he kept his job.
Well, because he was losing games when everyone was healthy. Like, it's one of those when people tell you who they are, believe them, right? He's showed us over and over again, he's not a good coach. So what are we holding on for? Other than the fact that you got to pay him no matter what. So maybe it was that. Maybe they're just like, you know what? We're wasting so much money on a team that's cap strapped, injury prone. And, you know, do we really want to pay two coaches for a year that's going to be wasted? I mean, it might be that.
Right.
But
it's still bad.
It's still terrible. You know, this is a good question. The next one to fall, it won't be Stefanski.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, no, it definitely won't. Eberflus would be in that conversation, obviously, too. It'll be Peterson. Like, there's no question in my mind. Based on what that team was supposed to be, right, compared to what it is we watch week in and week out, he has to get fired. Now, does he make it the rest of the season? I don't know. Did the Jags fire guys early? I can't really think of a situation where they have. I mean, I think they did with Meyer, but that's such a unicorn. Like everybody,
you had to do that.
They are loyal would have done that. So,
Yeah.
but as I recall, like the Jags ownership is pretty loyal. So I think that Peterson probably survives the year, but definitely gets fired. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see a scenario where he is the coach next year based on what we've seen. But yeah.
Not that I think it happens in season either, but I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Daboll gets let go at the end of the year, especially if they go ahead and move on from Daniel Jones and put a cap on that whole situation. If they, fully embrace the rebuild that should have really been going on for the last couple of years. But I'm basing that more, like I said, from an outside view. I didn't like his demeanor last year when things were going on and the way he handles a lot of situations. So I'd be interested to see what they feel like, or any insiders or other opinions, but I would not be surprised if that happens at the end of the year. So Stefanski, I'm reading the latest one, the play calling duties, but like they had him saddled with a terrible quarterback that, I think you and I agreed it didn't seem like he had the ability to pull him out of, line. It's like if I'm a baseball manager and my starting pitcher is injured and ownership is like, you still got to trot him out every 5 days. And every 5 days we lose a game 10-0. And I have to get up there and go, no, he's fine. We're definitely going to stick with him. Like, it just seems so.
Yeah, no. And so Daboll and the GM probably both get canned.
Right.
And although Daniel Jones isn't having his worst year ever, he's still not playing well.
Right. And I think that's the point.
So it's not like, why would you keep it? Right. His contract year where he was balling out had less to do with him and more to do with Saquon being in the room, because everybody had to respect Saquon, which opens your receivers up. Now, obviously that's true for any team, right? You need a complete football team. I get it. But when he doesn't have that element, he's also not that guy. Yeah. Right. Like he turns the ball over a lot. He gets sacked a lot. And so, not better, just not as bad. See, I mean, that's not a reason to keep a $40 million a year guy. Like you have an out after this season.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're paying him 20. Sure. Yeah. Whatever. You float it out there. You look for your quarterback. But I mean, are they a 2 or a 3 win team? I know there's like 7 2-win teams. So
I think they're at 2. I feel like they're at 2.
So, I mean, they're going to be in that top 5 pick range. So, I mean, they can look for one of the 3 quarterbacks that are going to be in this draft.
Yep. I actually had a talk with one of our favorite Giants fans and on this show, Mr. U, and he was sitting there talking about, being upset because they had just blown the game to the Steelers. And I was like, that's probably your best outcome. I think if you're a Giants fan, winning that game somehow against Pittsburgh would have been infinitely worse than losing it.
Sure.
Lose that game, keep the tank going. You still get an extended look at Daniel Jones. We all feel like you should be getting off him. But in case there was any doubt in your mind, you've still got the thing like he's not a $40 million quarterback. So, like I said, it's kind of the what brought up my other point. Your extended look now is, are you going ahead and getting rid of Daboll at the end of the year, which I think you should. So,
yeah,
but I think that was the best case scenario for them.
And in this scenario where you're just bad, do you see what you have in Drew Lock? Be like, you know what? We know what we have in Jones. We're already not winning. We're basically a loss or 2 away from mathematically being done anyway. Maybe see what you have in Lock, because, he had some decent starts in Seattle. So do you see, hey, do we bring him back? Because it was a 1-year deal. So if you move off from Jones, you lose Lock in the offseason, then what do you have? You have an empty quarterback room. So, I mean, I think they still have the Italian kid.
DiNardo.
Whatever. Yeah. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But
which is probably just as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, right? So, like obviously he's not the answer. Otherwise, he would have kept the job. So, I mean, it just then all of a sudden you're looking at okay, you're blowing everything up.
Right.
You can't effectively draft multiple quarterbacks, right? And even if you do, like you're going to be really bad. So yeah, I mean it's 9 teams have 2 wins. There we go. Yeah, I had a sheet. I just didn't load it up today. But yeah, I mean it's a season where parity isn't what it has been as of late, because there's 9 teams with 2 wins. I think there's 7 or 8 teams that have 6 wins or more. So I mean it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
Yep. And half of them are in the NFC North.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And to this other point, another reason why you do the Drew Lock experience, let's say even with as bad as the season goes, you're picking like 3rd or 4th or 5th, right?
Sure.
You don't like the quarterbacks that are available in this draft because it's all over the place as far as the quarterbacks, right? You do kind of what kneecaps here. You take the best available, maybe even trade back for more picks, right?
Yep.
You ride Drew Lock out for one more season, and then you check out what you got going on the year after that. But it's kind of like this past year. If you don't like, you should not trade up for a quarterback. You need the draft assets to fit the rest of this team.
Yeah, they need an entire team.
Yes. So don't do what the Carolina Panthers did. Don't trade away the whole draft for a quarterback. Okay. Yep. Stay where you are or trade back, get more stuff going, see if Drew Lock can handle a whole other year, and then just see. Look, if he's terrible, probably even better for you. Okay.
Exactly.
Better to be terrible than mediocre. So
exactly.
Hey, Drew Lock, go out, throw a couple left-handed interceptions for us, or pull the Will Levises for us, and whatever. If we're bad, and then if he's good, he's fine. Then you'll get it through another year. You'll be fine, and push back, kick the can on the drafting a quarterback. But they're in a prime decision. They just need to make some decisions.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's, I mean, that whole roster, like there's no position on that team that you're like, oh, like that guy should stay. Like you look at that whole roster and you're like, yeah, they're just 53 men away.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying is there's 3 QBs at best. There's probably only 2 in the first round. The third one is likely a second rounder, right? Late second, early third would be my guess. So I mean, it's not like there's great options at the quarterback position.
Trying to get a kiss from my wife on the way out. But yes, no, I heard what you said. Like, I'm interested to see what 3 quarterbacks do you think in the first round. So I think right now Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are kind of solidifying themselves. And of course, like I'm probably missing one because I follow way too much SEC and not much else. But I'm interested in what the third Ward said. Maybe, yeah. Ewers is an interesting one because he gets hurt every year, and then you see flashes of talent.
And that's why I said it'll probably be a late second.
Yeah.
Will be Ewers. And it'll be solely because he can't stay healthy. Not to say that guys don't, draft quarterbacks that get hurt all the time. I mean, Tua.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
sorry, Roger, if you're listening. Tua's catching some sprays.
Right. So it says that you can get drafted high even if you get hurt. So Ewers is probably the one to watch the most because he could be somewhere in the first round or all the way down into the third round.
Yeah. It's interesting to see if that game against Georgia and a really good defense hurts his stock. I mean, even gets pulled for a minute, I guess, too. Does that affect his stock? Or is it just like the only good defense he really played against, he didn't play well? And then, it'd be interesting to see how that evaluation goes. So, but I think Sanders and Ward are really the only 2 that kind of have solidified themselves as, they're going first round. And so, like, back to the Giants' point, then if you're going, if you're drafting 3rd, 4th, like, I'm not trading up for one of those 2 guys. I'm not. So, no, he doesn't. DJU, no.
Yeah. Nope.
Most guys who, I won't say never get drafted, but if you are on your 3rd transfer, stock goes to me way down. And as a quarterback, we're tracking those transfers way more. You might see a running back go a couple teams and you don't really notice them until they ball out of their third team. But he's not balling out. Like he's been associated with one of the worst, if not the worst, Florida State team of all time.
Yep.
He has been terrible. He was not great. Like he lost his first starting job at Clemson, which made the transfer. He did all right at Oregon State, but his Pac-12, most of us didn't really notice as much. And then he came back to Florida State, who was upset about missing the playoffs and has been terrible. Like draft stock is gone. So,
well, and when you think of Oregon State, even during that period, it wasn't the offense that people were talking about. It was the defense. You were like, oh, the defense is coming along at Oregon State.
Right.
And so the offense, like they were winning in spite of offense. The offense was okay. It was serviceable, but it wasn't great. But the defense looked really good. So see, there you go. It was mediocre at Oregon State. Yeah, like it was okay, right? Like it wasn't great, but their defense looked good. So I'm with Jeremy here. I think day 3 pick at best.
Yes, I agree. And now, I mean, there's no path to increasing his draft stock at this point. He's not even starting anymore. So, and I don't remember it was injury or just pulled, but I stopped paying attention to Florida State. I think as the coaches and fans also did too. So, yeah, I think he's done.
Yeah, well, I mean, he'll be an undrafted free agent. He may get a shot somewhere on a, he might get brought in for like one of the rookie mini camps to see if maybe they can place him on like a third string or a, practice squad. Maybe, I don't know. Like my guess is he ends up in the UFL.
Dang. You need to give him the CFL, huh?
No, yeah. Honestly, I think there's a clearer path to the NFL from the UFL than the CFL. There's a lot of letters there. But yeah, no, I think because of proximity, you have an easier path coming from the UFL in than you do coming from Canada.
True.
Yeah, so, I mean, I suppose I should do this part real quick before we run out of time. If you are into sports betting, you can do it right alongside us here at Football Talk using the QR code on the screen, 125% deposit bonus up to your first 3 deposits. There's also a 10% bet guarantee if you are not good at betting. And some restrictions do apply, but hit that QR code on the screen. And then, of course, if you are here in the Pacific Northwest and you don't remember the last time you had your ducts clean, it is probably a good time to do it, especially ahead of the holidays. Air quality, especially if you have family members that have allergies, will help with that. And of course, dryer ducts. There are more than 15,000 dryer fires every year. So if you can't remember the last time you did that, and even if you're not in the Pacific Northwest, probably want to find one of those companies wherever you are. All right. Okay, so we got, let's see, here we go. So I did power rankings for this week. I forget how angry everybody always gets about power rankings. Certainly Packers fans were immediately mad, but
why?
Because they're not on here and they wanted them to be there instead of the Texans, I guess. But the biggest one that I got a lot of hate for was having the Bills above the Ravens, even though the Ravens beat the Bills, right? But there's a distinct difference here. So even though the Ravens did beat the Bills, what I don't trust is Harbaugh to make the correct calls every week, right? Which is why they fade a little bit on my list, because otherwise I would have had the Ravens at 3, except in their 3 losses, they just forgot to use Henry, right? Their last loss, they ran him 11 times. The first week when they lost, they ran him 13. Every time they've given him less than 20 touches, they lose. And the fact that we're this far into the season and then they did it again to catch another L, that moves you down my list. Even if a team that's ahead of you, you've beat. Because that is something that can knock you out of the playoffs for being dumb. Because Well, we watched it last year. They decided to have 6 called runs to running backs in the playoffs, and they lost. So I don't trust the coaching staff to actually use their personnel, and that's why the Ravens fade a little bit.
Do you think it's funny that it's like when it happens, like happens in the first game, like, okay, it's a loss, happens against the loss, then they don't do it for a while, and then they go, hey, man, do you guys think that was an aberration or you think it's a real thing? I don't know, let's try it. Cap his runs at like, I don't know, 11, so okay, less than 20, we lose. Guys, I'm really thinking there might be something here.
See, you would hope they do that last part, but I think they're just like, you know what? Jury's still out. I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly believe that's a thing for them.
It is.
I don't know, guys. We just don't have enough evidence yet. That's only 3 games. Could still be an aberration. But, it's not like we went out and got him in the offseason for the extent, for the purpose of running him a lot and winning more games, right? Right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Well, I mean, they didn't even have him last year, right? And they were still the leading rushing team in the league. And then you go into that postseason game and they're just like, you know what? We're just not going to run. Bet they don't see that coming. It's like, good job, guys. You're doing exactly what they're good at, is stopping passing. Good job.
Yes. And by the way, he's also the rushing leader right now, despite your guys's, like the best defense against him right now has been the Ravens coaching staff. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. So this one, who wins today? So
I'm still going with Detroit.
Yeah. I still like a Lions Ravens Super Bowl. Like, I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And talk about a hard hitting event. Like that would be some fantastic football. I'd be about it. I do like the Lions. Honestly, because both coaching staffs do weird stuff in key moments. I don't know. Like that's probably
no lead. No lead is safe.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like I feel like both of those teams will randomly snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
They're just like, you know what? I could win, but if I do this, I can lose.
Yeah. We're not kicking this field goal on 4th and 2, even though we're already up 7 and can push it to 10. Nah.
That I've already failed to pick up twice.
Yes. I will see you're going for it on 4th down when you probably shouldn't, and I will raise you a no Derrick Henry runs in the 3rd quarter. What do you have now?
Right. So, I mean, it could be the weirdest thing. I still think I like the Lions in that situation if it was today.
Yeah.
If it was today.
I'll say this, Kneecap, and I've watched this show, man. Good show. Always good stuff. Fun stuff whenever I have time. A lot of guys, when you have shows in the middle of the day, man, I just work in the middle of the day. And I'm on ladders and under, in root and addicts and stuff. So I miss a lot of the middle of the day shows, but always a good show. I'm giving the Lions a hard time, but that's who I'm rooting for most at all this. I think when we started doing this, the more NFL stuff, I was like, I'm going to pick up the Texans and the Eagles. But, like, if the Lions played the Eagles for the right to go to the Super Bowl, I would be rooting for the Lions, like, wholeheartedly. One of my best friends, Lions fan, they started drafting, like, every other player from Alabama. So that definitely helps me to root for them. But, no, I just, I like that team. I would love to see that for the city. And that's who I would be rooting for most. And it's funny, it's like you look at here the Lions and I'm like, who are their matchups be? The 2, 3, and 4 team on your power rankings would all be good games, I think, for various reasons. But I would love Detroit,
no question.
In any of those matchups. So
I think for
roll pride.
I think the matchup I would like to see is I would like it to be the Ravens and the Lions, because matchup wise, it would be a tough game. Maybe the Bills too. KC. Well, I don't really want to see KC in there again, but I don't think that would actually be a great game. I think the Lions just beat the brakes off them.
You say that, but they just. Well, we're last year, San Francisco.
We're talking today, right?
I know, but like last year in the Super Bowl, San Francisco was controlling that game for like 75% of the game.
Sure.
but could never, it's just like, here's a Christian McCaffrey fumble, here, let's muffle punt. Here, let's not run into. It's just like there is something going on there, which, by the way, we haven't talked about, but you always go for 2 in certain situations in games. And that was one of them on Monday night. So I don't know if you have to get into that point. That is one of my biggest sticking points. But
the thing that was funny, I wish I would have loaded it up. In fact, I think let me see if I have it real quick, because it is interesting the way that he responded to that question.
Yeah. Yes, which just made it even worse. Like, can I just punch you in the face? The Ravens and Bills definitely cannot get over that. And if you look at the last playoff run where they had to play them, it was just like little stuff here and there. The Ravens, I've said this a million times. I don't know if you caught it, but you hold him scoreless for the whole second half of the game. But like what Bo said, 3 or 4 rushes to your running backs and you lose the game. And then there were actually people who cried conspiracy because of Taylor Swift. I was like, did you not watch the game plan? Unless Taylor Swift was calling plays on the sideline, the Ravens just blew that one. Okay, that's just at home. The best running team decides not to run, that's on you. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because if they would have just done what they do well, they probably win that game.
Yep.
And I mean, that's I don't know. Like I would have went for that 2-point conversion, right? And it was funny because, unfortunately, I don't have the soundbite. I thought I did, but he basically said we were playing to get into overtime, right?
Why?
And he's like, we kicked the ball because of the field conditions. And I laughed because when I was sitting here watching it, I was like, oh man, it is so nasty out. I would go for 2 here because the odds of missing this kick go way up because of how slippery the field has been, how glossy that ball was. I was just like, man, I would have went for 2 here just because I don't know if I make this extra point.
Exactly.
Plus, their line let a kick almost get blocked earlier in the game, right? Like there was a punt that a guy was like right there. So if you're having a little bit of trouble blocking it up, the conditions are terrible. You got to think of that plant foot. Does it slide? Does he miss the kick because he doesn't get good footing? I mean, so as you're looking at all these things, everything leaned towards, hey, let's just try and punch it in and win now.
Yes. Especially in the regular season, you don't want to go to overtime with Mahomes, knowing there's no guarantee of seeing the ball if the coin flip goes the wrong way. Yep. The weather thing didn't make sense. You just drove down the whole field on the weather. You've got all the momentum. You're cooking. Yep. You don't have your 2 best wide receivers. That doesn't bode well for this game going. You're the underdog. You're on the there's a million reasons. And then, like you said, weather, kicking, a million reasons to go for 2.
Yep.
I don't have anything in the column that says kick it. Like I have 0, So
thanks for coming
Win. Yep. Hope everything's going all right, Win. There's nothing, I challenge anybody to write something in the column that says, yes, go for 2 and go to overtime with Patrick Mahomes. And I always say in the regular season specifically because you have no guarantee of seeing the ball. And have we seen that already twice this year, I believe? When he gets the ball in overtime, it's over with. I didn't get any of that. So
the whole sequence didn't make sense.
No.
So,
and of course, my practice, I listened to a Locked On Tampa Bay, and he was he was like, here's the biggest play in the game. Throw out all these other scenarios. I said no, it was the decision not to go for 2. That was terrible. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and he wasn't wrong in the when he came out and was like, hey, we had opportunities throughout the game. That isn't what decided the game. He's not entirely wrong, right? That's like never let a game come down to a bad call from a ref, right?
Right.
But it may not have been why you lost.
Right.
But it is certainly why you didn't win.
Yes.
Right? Like maybe you could have got the stop and got the ball back and whatever. Sure. It's possible. Stop, hold them to a field goal, whatever. Obviously possible. At the same time, if you punch it in right there, it's over.
Yes.
Because at that point they would have had under 30 seconds. And if the defense did just as much as they did, they weren't in field goal range, right? Now, obviously, it plays out differently because, situation's different. But I don't know. Like that one I struggled with because it's just like, man, it just seemed like such an obvious 2-point conversion time.
Yes.
And just try not to ever go against Mahomes in overtime. Yeah. Even when he hurts himself, somehow he makes it happen. So funny thing, speaking of Mahomes, we'll wrap it up with this, I guess. So I was at the bank yesterday standing in line, and I had one of my football talk shirts on, and this guy standing in line in front of me, he's like, "Oh, football talk." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, so we need to get rid of Geno." Like, that's the first thing he says, right?
I saw your post. Yeah.
So then I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, like I get you're frustrated, right? But he's the most pressured guy in the league, the second most, or the fourth most hurries, the fourth most drops. It's just like, the worst ranked O-line by every position and as a unit. I mean, you can say that he's not that guy, but I mean, no one would be that guy behind the line. And he's like, yeah, but Mahomes can do it. I'm like, you're talking about a one-of-one guy. Yeah. Like, there's 31 other teams that want that dude.
Right. Yeah. So, if you're gonna compare your quarterback to Mahomes, like, most of them are just gonna look terrible. Like, what is that? What you're doing now? Hey, our guy lost. Mahomes wouldn't have lost that. What? Oh, okay.
Again, that's 31 other guys. Like, even if you were like a huge Josh Allen fan, be like, oh yeah, well, Mahomes would have, my guy could have made that. And it's like, well, yeah, until he plays Mahomes, right? Like, you're comparing him to the most elite guy in the league. Yeah, of course, our guy doesn't look great. You know what does look great is the balance sheet, because we're only paying him like $28 million a year to lead the league in passing.
Yeah.
And even with the mistakes he made this last week, he still has almost a 90 QBR.
Yeah.
And somehow still leading the league in passing. So, I mean, like, what are we talking about? I'm not a Geno guy, but man, make it make sense.
Right. He makes it sound like CEOs just one, picking up the phone and say, hey, we're willing to swap Geno for Mahomes. What else do we have to throw in to get this done? If the phone call lasts that long, I'd be shocked.
It would just be like, click. Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a wild take, because as soon as you try and like dive any deeper, they also never have any answers, right? You're just like, okay, well, say we get rid of him. Say we get rid of the guy for the sake of getting rid of the guy. Okay, great. Is the answer in the building? Sam Howell? Probably not. Are you going to be good enough to draft anybody? Well, based on the record currently, no. Right? Because, I mean, there's a couple of these teams that aren't going to win another game.
Yep.
So, that means both quarterbacks that are available this year are already gone. So now you've got rid of Geno. Sam Howell's not the guy, because we watched what he did in Washington behind a bad offensive line, and this line is worse than that one.
Yep.
So what is your plan? Or are you just like, we're just not going to have a quarterback? Like, I don't know.
What they'll do is they'll draft a third or fourth round quarterback in the first or second round, and then just be really unhappy with them. They're a second round pick. Yeah, but should they have been? You got rid of Geno, and then you started reaching for other stuff. That's what happened. The snowball thing. So.
Every time I follow up with then what's your answer? Like, who do we go get? It's always it's like, yeah, okay, shut up, man. Like, you can't complain and then also have no plan.
Right.
If you're like, yeah, Geno's not the guy, but if we were to move DK and this other piece, and we can probably get, Lawrence, who's underachieving where he's at, and the Jags are going to blow it up or whatever, like, at least then it sounds like you put some thought in it. But when you're just like, you're just like, okay, yeah, just have a good day, sir.
Right. I'm with you.
That being said, if you've been watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. And of course, if you are watching on Roku TV, be sure to stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we got to get out of here. Right up against it. Take it easy, everybody.
In Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows, giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand.